Well, what's going to happen to my pumpkins?
In a time long past, the armies of the dark came again into the lands of men. Their leaders became known as the Fallen Lords, and their terrible sorcery was without equal in the West. In 30 years they reduced the civilized nations to carrion and ash, until the free city of Madrigal alone defied them. An army gathered there, and a desperate battle was joined against the Fallen. Heroes were born in the fire and bloodshed of the wars which followed, and their names and deeds will never be forgotten. Wednesday, August 3rd, Crow's Bridge. Yesterday our Legion entered the village of Crow's Bridge and halted there for the night. We are just 4 days' march from the besieged city of Madrigal now, and with a little luck should arrive there in time to prevent its capture by the enemy. Shiver, one of the Fallen Lords, has been attacking the city for 2 days, but so far has been held back by its defenders. We all know the battle for Madrigal will decide the fate of all the northern lands, and that if it falls we will soon have nowhere to retreat but the ocean. Fearing for their safety, the villagers here pleaded with us to remain when we broke camp this morning. None of them understand yet what is happening, but they have all seen the refugees from the south, and they are frightened. Our officers seemed unsympathetic until the people returned with 9 young pigs and 10 dozen loaves of bread. 15 of us are to stay now, perhaps to fight boredom instead of the Fallen Lords, and watch the bridge here for 2 days.
Hey, did you hear what happened to Avon's Grove?
Yeah, there were no bodies.
What'd they do with all the bodies?
Tuesday, August 5th, King's Highway. Having turned back the attack on Crow's Bridge, we headed south to rejoin the Legion in another small town called Otterferry. On our way we met a force of our own men hurrying in the opposite direction, who gave us ill news. The vanguard of our army, 20,000 men, has been camped near Otterferry for 2 days now. The mayor of that village must have guessed our plan to cross the Scamander River behind the main enemy force, and to attack them by surprise. Perhaps in the cowardly hope that he would be spared when the Dark sacked Madrigal, the mayor intends to betray us to the enemy. A quick death will be too good for him, but we will have time for nothing else. One of the locals knows of the clearing where the mayor arranged his meeting with the Dark and will lead us there. Friday, August 8th, Otter Ferry. Our vanguard has crossed the Scamander unchallenged and remains hidden on the southern bank of the river. Their assault will begin 2 hours after midnight against Shiver's right flank, at the same time the Madrigal garrison throws open the Gate of Storms and attacks her from the front. But I won't be anywhere near Madrigal when this happens. An hour before the main attack, a small group of men and I will head in the opposite direction and strike at the enemy camp alone, hoping to divert forces and attention from the city before the real battle begins. The plan is to fight our way across a bridge and into the captured village of Comfort. From there, we'll locate the enemy camp and create as much of a diversion as possible. Every thrall that remains in the camp to deal with us is one less that our main force must hack to pieces at Madrigal. Monday, September 15th, outskirts of Tyr. The battle for Madrigal lasted 4 days without pause. Shiver fell on the first night in a spectacular dream duel with Rabican, one of the 9. No one expected this. We have never before challenged one of the Fallen and won. But the truth behind the victory is stranger than any of the rumors. Apparently the 9 found the severed head of one of Balor's enemies from the old days, buried out in the desert under several tons of sand and rock, and managed to start talking to the thing. Balor is the power behind the Fallen Lords, and we figure his enemy is our friend. They say that the head had an old score to settle with Shiver, and told Rabican that her one weakness was vanity, and showed him how to exploit it. The head appears to know something about everything, and now it has us looking for an artifact called the Total Codex. It's been located in the ruined city of Covenant, but the first group sent to retrieve it has not returned. In a few minutes, Rabican himself is going to send a few of us through a world knot to Covenant to bring back the Codex. Monday, September 15th, Shepherd's Gate, Covenant. The Watcher has entered Covenant from the north, and his tireless undead are raping the old city a second time, tearing down what few structures stand in their way, and choking the sky with dust and smoke. That he wants the book which now rests at the bottom of my pack is clear. Against my better judgment, I opened the Codex last night to a random page, and read about the life of a man not yet born, who would resurrect the Macridia and visit horrors on the world without equal in history or myth. I believed every word. I have resolved to destroy the thing before allowing it to become an instrument of the dark. Moriak is on his feet now, talking to the men. We met him and a few other survivors of the first expedition hiding in a collapsed cellar a few hundred feet away from the outer wall, and joined them for a brief rest until dawn. Moriak was Prince Regent here during King Ulrich's adolescence, and knows of an underground tunnel just outside the city which leads to Shoal, a village 4 miles away down the coast. The king's family used it to escape Covenant when Soulblighter leveled the city 12 years ago, and today we hope it will help us elude the Watcher. Friday, November 7th, the Plain of Scales. We were 2 days in that tunnel out of Covenant, the Watcher crossing above us every few hours, shaking the ground in his fury, and twice nearly burying us alive. Sometime on the second day, the tremors grew less distinct, and we were relieved to find nothing but rats and mosquitoes waiting for us when we reached Shoal. Not wishing to return west, we headed down the coast toward the old city of Scales, where we met Maeldon's southern garrison and turned over the codex. We learned there that by coincidence the combined armies of the North are only 4 days behind us, heading for the mountains to stop the Deceiver, another of the Fallen Lords, from crossing the cloud spine before winter. But we can't wait for them. There is a world knot west of the cloud spine, and the head insists that the enemy has learned to travel through the knots. If we don't destroy this portal, we might hold the mountains only to be outflanked by forces emerging from the knot behind us. 8 Dwarven irregulars and every man in Scales from the Legion have volunteered for the mission. Wednesday, November 12th, Fool's Traverse, Bagrada. Damn, I hate the cold. A few months of warm weather, and you forget what it's like to have your eyes frost shut and the snot freeze in your nose. And it doesn't bother the undead one bit either, I'm sure. We're up here in the mountains to stop the Deceiver from crossing into the west before winter closes the high passes. It's already started to snow pretty hard, so we shouldn't have to be here longer than a few more days. Bagrada is a maze of tiny canyons crisscrossing the mountains between the plain of Scales and Forest Heart. There are 30 small groups of men like mine waiting at key junctions inside the pass, but the main body of our force is camped in the valley below, with hot meals and dry beds. I guess the worst thing about having a reputation for being a bunch of hardasses is that the Legion always finds itself where the fighting will be ugliest. So we're up here as the first line of defense against an attack by the Deceiver. Tyrfing just came running into camp, bellowing that our scout's signal fire has gone out. That means trouble.
They learned too late that there were satchel charges hidden among the debris.
Friday, November 14th, Devil's Overlook, Bagrada. The snow hasn't stopped in 2 days, and in some places the drifts are already twice the height of a man. Even the Fallen will have to wait until spring before they try to cross the mountains here again. But not all of the enemy retired ahead of the snow. For the last 2 hours we've watched a column of 100 soulless, separated from their masters and obviously lost, wandering the canyons below. The dwarves are running about like delirious children. It should be a spectacular ambush. Rabicon has held 7 gates, and the snow has begun there as well. We have done the unthinkable. We have pushed the Fallen back to the mountains. But our success here is tempered by Ulrich's failure to return west with the Eastern Army before winter, and the Watcher's continued presence behind us. It's not going to be an easy winter. Wednesday, November 19th, the Barrier. I have turned back my journal a few months and placed the next 2 entries in chronological order after Bagrada, where they seem most appropriate. I did not witness the events I'm about to relate, but instead repeat here the stories of those who survived them. It wasn't until after the disaster at Forest Heart that the rest of us even heard about any of this. It all started when the Nine learned that Ulrich had been captured by the Deceiver and his army decimated. I'm not certain how they figured this out, but I'll bet the Head told them. And this was back when the Head could do no wrong. At the behest of the Nine, our officers chose 5 champions from among the Legion. They were carried over the mountains by balloon and dropped at night in the rough desert 20 miles from the Deceiver's camp. Their instructions were to rescue Ulrich by any means available, and to return him to the west. I believe that the Nine were suspicious of the circumstances surrounding Ulrich's capture, and wished to discover why the Head had sent him over the mountains. Wednesday, November 19th, the barrier. Finding Ulrich, the companions later told me, was the easy part, and breaking the enchantments which bound him the matter of but a few moments' consideration. It wasn't until they turned to escape, leading the barely conscious and unresponsive Ulrich, that the rescue became a thing of legend. The companions say that Ulrich became more and more lucid toward the end, and revealed things that day in the desert which only made sense in the light of later events. He continually returned to the belief that he had been betrayed. Ulrich babbled about a suit of armor so powerful that its wearer was invulnerable to attack and tireless in battle. He claimed that it was buried somewhere in the eastern desert, and that he had been sent by the head to retrieve it. They say Ulrich talked about the head often, ridiculing the Nine's belief that it was one of the Avatara of Connaught. Connaught was the great hero of the Wind Age, who drove the evil Moagim from the earth, and the head claims to have been one of Connaught's closest advisors during this time. Once Ulrich even spoke of the head's defeat by Balor, where it lost its body. But I've begun to wonder how one of the Avatara of the Wind Age outlived Connaught himself by hundreds of years to fight Balor in a battle long before the West had even heard of the Fallen Lords. I have been unable to reconcile this with what I know of history. Sunday, November 30th, outskirts of Silvermines. The old stories all tell that when Balor freed the Watcher from his prison under the cloud spine, one arm was left trapped in his prison of solid rock. Bound by a powerful confinement dream, it should have remained there forever, but it didn't. We're 100 miles from Bagrada, and 2 days ahead of the rest of the Legion today, outside a town called Silvermines, looking for the Watcher's arm. You have no idea how small it makes you feel to be poking around the ruins of an abandoned town looking for the shriveled arm of the second or third most powerful sorcerer in living memory. I don't understand how the arm got to Silvermines, or how the Nine knew where to look for it, but I can tell they want it bad. They hope to use the Watcher's arm against him if we find it, rather like knowing his true name, only better. Again, I don't pretend to understand. Problem is, the Deceiver is thinking the same thing. Some of the Fallen are over a millennia old, and their rivalries go back just as far. We know the Deceiver is looking for the arm too, and has been digging up silver mines since last summer. We're going in this evening to grab it. Sunday, November 30th, foothills of the Cloud Spine. The enormous volcano overlooking Seven Gates is erupting for the first time in 10 centuries. The tremors started late yesterday, and since midnight there has been a constant rain of hot ash and fire. Even here, 30 miles away, it already feels like summer. As if the mountain's fury were an ill omen, Rabican was encircled and crushed by the Watcher, who attacked by surprise from the west. The survivors of the battle who have reached us speak of ribbons of fire tearing flesh from bone, and thick clouds of poison which rotted whole formations of men to pieces in moments. Our wizards were powerless to stop the carnage. They also say that the pass of Seven Gates has become a raging river, fed by snow melting as the volcano heats the earth around it. The defenders who remained in the pass are surely drowned, and in a few days, when the water is gone, the pass will be open again and undefended. But none of this concerns us. What remains of the Silvermines garrison is less than 10 minutes behind us now, determined to claim the arm. We are all too exhausted to continue running, and our scouts have chosen a hill up ahead where we can make a stand. I've heard there are a number of our own men among those pursuing us, turned to the dark by the Deceiver. None of us look forward to meeting them in battle.